Hello everyone, I'm Rukmini Reddy, VP of Engineering, Platform at Slack. I joined Slack earlier this year to lead the platform engineering organization that delivers exceptional first-party and third-party app experience, as well as drive the vision of Workflow Builder, Slack's no-code automation tool. In this talk today, we will explore how management is evolving through distributed remote work, and hoping you all leave with actionable tips. The topic is leading with empathy in the age of COVID. The truth today, remote work is here to stay. 2020 has accelerated trends like remote, distributed work significantly. It's changed the way we all do work today. While we are hopeful about the news about a potential vaccine around the corner, even when things normalize, I believe that remote work is here to stay. Slack's Future Forum, which is a consortium think tank that will help companies make the transition necessary to thrive in the new economy, published a study recently. The future is hybrid. 11.6% of knowledge workers want to return to a full-time office space, while 72.2% want a hybrid remote office model. This will present us with some challenges like isolation, difficulty building relationships with colleagues, and not being aware of what others are working on. At the same time, there's some increased benefits like a better work-life balance, no commute, increased job satisfaction, and lower stress. So what is a blueprint to build remote relationships? I once led a team that was distributed and stayed together for 8 years across 2 companies and 2 continents. One of the members of my team, Pasha, was the first hire in a new geography. The first time I met him, he was not fluent in English, and I didn't know how to speak any Ukrainian. Our early conversations contained a lot of gestures and typing in our chat tool. One day, many years ago, in our one-on-one, instead of the usual, "How are you doing today?" or "How are your projects going?" I begin by asking a simple question. What is the most important thing you and I have to talk about today? He shared he was feeling frustrated with his fluency in English and felt like it was hindering his growth. As a result of that conversation, I set up support for him by providing him an English language tutor. Over the years, this support scaled with our team, and we had an English coaching and tutoring center to help all employees in that geography. The week I was leaving this company, I traveled to Ukraine to say goodbye to my team in person. A few hours before I boarded my plane, I had an event to speak to a group of teenagers exploring the possibilities of breaking into tech. Most of them in that group did not speak English, so I had a translator with me. However, there was a young woman in the audience who asked me in very fluent English where I had learned to speak English. I told her I grew up learning English and I didn't have a fun story to share. At that very moment, I noticed Pasha was standing at the back of the room. And I asked him if he felt comfortable sharing the story of how he learned English with the group. The young girl looked at him and they both started giggling. I was surprised. I asked them if I was missing something and if they knew each other. She said, "Yes, that is my dad." That one-on-one conversation that began several years ago between Pasha and I changed the opportunities he had for himself and the opportunities he was able to provide his daughter. I have published a remote one-on-one framework that I have used over the years. Please feel free to make it your own. Tell me how it's going and how you've adapted it to work for yourself. I shared earlier that I had joined Slack earlier this year. However, I joined Slack during the pandemic, so I count myself as among the remote natives at Slack. I've never met my boss, Cal, our co-founder CTO, in person. And I'm not alone. The engineering department has grown 20% in 2020. So, what was onboarding like, you might ask? Slack used to previously fly in all those onboarding globally to our office in San Francisco pre-pandemic. When the world shut down in March, we had to quickly transition this experience overnight to be remote first. I think we did an outstanding job. The week before I joined, I learned that my team created a Rukmini emoji to welcome me into Slack and celebrate my joining, which was really sweet and thoughtful and a small way to welcome me that made me feel like I belonged. Prior to my first day, I was also invited to a new hire cohort channel where I got to interact with my onboarding cohort and was able to build camaraderie as part of the onboarding process. My manager set me up for success by having 15-minute daily check-ins with me for the first 1 month. That was very helpful, and I was able to get answers to my questions or ask for any support I need very quickly. My peer and VP of product, Steve Wood, started just a few weeks prior to me. So I was inspired by my manager's playbook and set up daily 15-minute syncs with him so we could onboard together and build a strong cross-functional relationship. We said we would stop those meetings if we ran out of topics, and 5 months in, we still run out of time. This year has forever altered the nature of communication at work. I'll now share a couple of examples of how we use Slack, our own product, to make remote work work. If you're not familiar with Workflow Builder, it is a visual tool that allows Slack users to automate routine functions and create custom workflows. No coding is required. So something I've been doing differently this year, we've been pre-recording our platform AMA or all hands and sharing it in our team channel for asynchronous communication. After the team has consumed the content, we use our own Workflow Builder product to have our team submit questions they have for an AMA. Similarly, as an engineering team, we love our demos and we leverage our Workflow Builder product to sign up for demo days. For example, we publish recurring reminders on when the next demo days are, and all engineers need to do to sign up is use the raising hand emoji and they get added to the list. No manual scheduling, maintaining invites, none of that. What is the purpose of leadership? I think it is to answer people's questions most of the time. And it's been fun rethinking how Slack uses our own product to make remote work work. Excitingly, we are working on integrating enhanced voice and video communication into Slack. This will allow our users to quickly sync with their teams by sharing and following video updates and channels. This is a preview into our thinking, and we'll have more to share as the features evolve. Stay tuned. I know our time is drawing to a close, but I want to quickly share some bonus lightning round tips and examples of how you can bring empathy to the forefront of what you do as an engineering leader. Little things can go a long way. My team has something called Awesome Sauce Time, which is an in-channel kudos and a victory lap every week to celebrate each other's success. Try it out. In the past life, we used to hand out foil balloons to celebrate people's work anniversaries in our office. We have now created a ritual of celebrating anniversaries virtually with balloon emojis and a thank you message in a public team channel. Shout out to my peer and our amazing VP of Product Engineering, Fuzzy, who, like me, is a remote native at Slack. He created a channel which I'm very inspired by called Fuzzy Thoughts, where he shares his latest prototypes that he's working on or leadership lessons. People are able to get to know him better, both personally and professionally. With an added bonus, it's asynchronous. It has been a very stressful year, and it was a very anxious election season last month. On election day, we have a channel called Platform Random, and we let the team know that we are there to hang out and share pictures of puppies or what we are stress eating, anything to get us through that long day, which eventually became a long week. Being empathetic makes you a better leader and a better engineering manager. We need to make space to hear out others' stories, especially now, more important than ever, in this very weird year and age of COVID. It starts with conversations we have with ourselves and with others. Conversations with connection and openness, curiosity and trust serve as the secret sauce to building meaningful relationships and high-performing teams. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yay! Rukmini, it's so awesome to hear you talk, and I really empathize with the appreciation that you have for empathy in the workplace, and acknowledging that so many of us are using Slack, we're using Zoom, we're kind of all over the place, and yet we're remote and we don't have that face-to-face thing that makes empathy feel so much easier. I appreciate you recognizing this topic and the importance of it in the workplace.
Thank you, David. It's very nice to be here. Hello, everyone from all over the world. And I think this is the advantage of being remote in 2020. We can just all hop on a conference together, no matter where we are.
100%. And I love your awesome sauce and your kudos. Believe it or not, so we met prior to the pandemic. I totally forgot that you joined Slack during the pandemic, which is wild. So amazing to see, just career trajectory, and congratulations on all of your various successes.
Thank you, David.
Everybody there. That idea of giving kudos is actually, like, in startup that I started this past year, is focused on a platform to be able to share credit and give kudos and capture who did what and what skills they use in their company. So I very much appreciate the need for capturing and giving kudos and showing empathy. With that, I actually would love, because we actually already have a bunch of questions pre-populated from folks, to just dive into the questions that folks have. So folks, as you have questions, feel free to go into the Q&A tab on the side of your screen. There's a Q&A section that's separate from the chat. It says Q&A at the top. Put your questions in there. And if you have any questions or don't have any questions, it's all good, because you can upvote other people's questions as well. So we're going to start with this first question here. This is from Tyler Brown. It's already getting more and more upvotes. I think we'll see interesting new challenges with a hybrid model. If part of an engineering team is co-located in an office, it puts remote people at a disadvantage. Do you have any thoughts to avoid this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, interesting enough, the previous startup I worked at was fully remote. So it's almost like a premonition of the things that were to come in this weird hybrid world that we're going to live in. So I'll share an example from there. And I think in my years of experience managing distributed teams as well, this is a very common problem. This is not a new problem. If you have teams in various countries in the past and various locations and geographies, people would say, oh, I feel left out. All the meetings are US time. It's very similar. So I have some recommendations that work really well. Of course, you can hear my lawnmower, because why not? It's 2020, y'all. The gardener decided to show up just at this moment.
Can't hear it at all. You're good.
All right. What I was going to say was, I think we all have to be more empathetic to each other, and I have some recommendations which work really well. If it's more than 2 people and these 2 people are not co-located in the same office, everybody just go hop on a Zoom. Don't do it. Your colleagues, they feel like you can empathize with them. They will be included. And I think we need to build that muscle. We all have to. Like this year, if anything this year has taught us, it's to try things we've never tried before. So I would highly recommend, it's easy to go back to the way we were. And it's easy to I think a lot of us are maybe in many ways looking forward to going back to the way we were. But can you imagine now being in a room of 50 people, in an offsite? I don't know how many years it's going to take me to overcome that. So
50 people, I'll take 2.
Probably maybe 2023, David, I'll see you then. But I highly recommend just being intentional with your setup, intentional with your meeting. And especially if you're a leader, especially if you're an engineering manager, you have to lead by example.
100%. Yeah, I'm getting emotional just thinking about seeing people again, but 100%. And that example is probably a lot more challenging when you have to lead it remotely. So I'm fully supportive, right? I mean, you work at Slack and you're saying sometimes you got to step out of Slack, get into Zoom, get face-to-face. I recall for myself, right? When we have, as a manager, in addition to all of the technical things that one deals with, right? You oftentimes have to deal with things that are emotionally charged, those crucial conversations. And how often is it that you're in that Slack with somebody or a group and, it starts to get to that point when you're like, oh, there are emotions in this conversation, right? And how interesting is it that there are a lot of people out there that will just keep slacking, come hell or high water, they will just keep slacking and have the back and forth and all the emotions are there. And it's like, they're not even aware. And then by the end, you might leave thinking, oh, we resolved the problem, but both people leave the conversation with a lot of resentment, right? So that idea of going on Zoom, going face to face to be when emotions are there in any way, shape or form as a form of receiving and giving empathy, seems like a really effective approach, no?
Yeah, it is an effective approach. And I say, I think it's not about the tool, it's about how we show up as humans. I'll give you an example. Something I do when I join a new team, which I also did when I joined Slack recently, is I have this template, which I have not published yet, someday. It's about a first meeting. The first time you meet a person, what are some things that you have to talk about? And what has really helped me, I ask people things like, what does respect look like for you in a professional setting? And can you walk me through some examples of how you assess respect from your colleagues, your peers, your managers? And this is a very grounding question, and it helps understand where people are coming from, and it helps put us on a shared journey. So in future, when those misunderstandings arise, or when you just want to give some tough feedback and you want to have a conversation, what it's grounded in. You have something to go back on. So some people, for example, might say, I like written communication. Can you please just whatever you want to say, can you send it to me written down first so I can process it before we talk face to face? And some other people are like me, I prefer everything said directly to my face and in the moment. So it's really helpful to just make some space for how people like to receive feedback, how they like to be communicated with, what does respect look like for them? And something really along those lines that is something we've forgotten as a world this year is, how do you like to be celebrated? I know, David, you and I talked about this on a podcast a long time ago. What is your love language, right? Is it words of appreciation? Is it gifts, which are much harder to do these days, but something like that? And that helps you have more productive conversations with people, even remotely, irrespective of the tool, whether you're on Slack chatting with them, whether they're getting on Zoom, whatever it is, be human.
I love that. The idea of what does respect mean to you? That's brilliant. Number one, I'm gonna use that. Hope you don't mind if I steal it. There's these cultural differences that we have, right? Just the way that we are raised in terms of what respect means to us, right? So when and like you were describing, the love languages. So what we perceive to be respectful, or what we perceive to be praise or helping somebody, may actually not be achieving that if they're used to something different or they need something different, right? I like to talk about how, there are fear-driven environments and praise-driven environments. Some people are motivated in a fear-driven environment because it keeps them kind of always running. I myself am the opposite. In a fear-driven environment, I just get really angry. I need the praise, like I don't know, the millennial, give me gold stars or something that I am. I don't know. So I love that attention to, needing to understand what drives that person and how that person perceives respect and beyond. One of the other things that our startup is doing is like getting an operating manual. When people join a company, to be able to say, what's my operating manual? Here's how I get respect.
Oh, I love operating manuals.
Right. They're amazing. So, and you can do it via Google Docs. You don't need like an application to do it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so many other tools, right? Like whether it's Myers-Briggs or Insights or Enneagrams. I mean, you can frown upon them and say, oh, they're like work astrology, but I disagree. I think they actually help you build stronger intrapersonal relationships. And so much of leadership is that intrapersonal relationship. It's about understanding what motivates the humans on our team, like what inspires you to do the best work of your life. And it is the burden and responsibility of the engineering manager or an engineering leader to do that.
100%. This next question from Alexandra, you've mentioned better work-life balance as one of the benefits of remote/hybrid work. However, I've seen, I've seen some people struggling more in this setup. Do you have tips on how to help people on this?
Yes. Just some context. I have 7-year-old twin boys, y'all. So just think about that. Most parents, this has been a rough year. Overnight, we were like now engineering leaders, parents, homeschool teachers, so much respect for our teachers, but we're in an immense amount of stress. And I think, again, be empathetic. You have to manage your own expectations with your manager. That's what it comes down to, right? Slack has these wonderful perks, like we have Fridays where the company proactively has been giving us a Friday off every month for self-care and to focus on ourselves. We've had several benefits for working parents to get emergency time off and to just take care of whatever is coming their way this year. And I think if you are in a position to be able to drive some of that change at your organization, it's going to go a long way. And I think if you're in the other side where you feel like you need more support, it's up to you to ask. And I think set boundaries for yourself. I personally have after 5 p.m., I will not take any calls. So my calendar is blocked off because I say, and you know what? I put family time as a meeting on my calendar.
I love that. And like putting lunch on your calendar, it took me so many years to finally put lunch on my calendar because I saw it as like an efficiency game that I could move my lunch wherever it needs to be, right? And then you have those days where you're just back to back and you don't eat until late. And then you realize I'm not putting my self-care first.
Yeah. And it's all about setting expectations. Your coworkers are depending on you. Your peers are depending on you. If you have to take care of that, of your child's Zoom class where they're like, Mom, I can't log in. I can't get into the class. Just make that moment to let your coworkers know that you'll be right back. Or set up, if you use Slack, this is what I love about Slack is you can have a status saying caretaking at the moment. I'll be right back in 30 minutes or an hour.
I remember when I was CEO at Doctor.com most recently, and I had this presentation that, because I'm a fan of all this stuff too, empathy and just showing care at work and bringing the human element because it's such an important part of work. And the talk that I was going to give was about taking care of yourself. And ironically, right before that meeting, as part of a fun thing, this was back several years ago when these super spicy chips, the hottest chips in the world, you can eat them, and people around the office were doing this one chip challenge. I didn't realize that people, you're supposed to barely touch it. Anyways, I ate this whole chip and I thought, what's the big deal? I'm from New Mexico. I love spicy food. And then, anyways, long story short, in the middle of this talk about taking care of yourself, I had this extreme ridiculous thing happening in my stomach, and I realized this is so severe, I actually need to stop talking and I need to use the restroom. And I stopped my talk mid-conversation. I said, since we're talking about self-care, I'm actually going to step away in the middle of my presentation and I'll be right back. And as ridiculous as that seems or sounds, that self-care in that moment was actually the right call for me. And 100%, during the pandemic, if you got to take care of your kids, you got to do your thing. We're human. We understand you don't need to be perfect. And it makes it safe for other people to take care of themselves as well.
Absolutely.
I love it. This next question from Hamid. What questions or topics do you discuss with your team during the one-on-one? So I think this is just a really common question in general about one-on-ones. A lot of folks, maybe they're new managers, they've either been too like work focused in the one-on-ones, or maybe the opposite, like too much like a therapy session. Like, what's the agenda for a one-on-one?
Yeah, this is something like even I struggled with for so much in my early career. I am very much like, I'm very task driven and very much like I like to get things done. So I feel like, it occurred to me, and I shared that story about passion. Like, I think that was a moment of realization for me when I showed up that I was just being very tactical in my one-on-ones and very work driven. And that one question that I shared, it's such a simple question, right? It makes room for people to show up the way they want to show up that day, asking, what's the most important thing you and I should be talking about today? Start there. Trust takes sometimes years to build. Be patient, but start there. Give an opening, and you will see repeatedly asking the same questions over and over again is super helpful. One, you're predictable. One, you show up and you said, what is trust? Like, it's showing up and you said you would over and over again, isn't it? That's what leadership's about. So I would recommend you just stick to the same one-on-one schedule and keep asking. And it's hard to like say, oh, I'm busy, there's so much happening, let me put off my one-on-one. I saw a comment in the chat earlier where somebody was like, oh, my manager doesn't want to meet one-on-one. I'm sorry, that's a terrible manager. you need to meet one-on-one with your people. So if you're pushing off any meeting, now more than ever, don't push off your one-on-ones. I feel there's a lot of room for us to like not meet for transactional things. We need to all get better at asynchronous communication. We need to start writing things down more, or recording videos, or creating Slack channels where we can talk about things, or using bots that help us or apps that help us. But don't make room for people. Make space and time for your one-on-ones. They are the most critical conversation you will have as a manager. They will tell you about your organization health. You'll have a pulse on your team. You will know what the challenges they are facing, and it's your job as a leader to help your team with all of that.
100%. And if you're not having the one-on-ones, it's worth self-reflecting and asking yourself why, right? When I reflect on for myself, when I don't want to do one-on-ones, I still do them, but when I reflect on why I don't, it's usually because there's some kind of elephant in the room going on, right? There's an uncomfortable conversation I don't want to have. There's a person who I've been avoiding, maybe moving from the team or even potentially letting go, that I just kind of want to forget about. And it's like, well, maybe this is your opportunity to address the situation. This next question from Priyanka: what are some tips for forming better relationships within the team when folks are onboarding remotely?
So I onboarded remotely into my new leadership role at Slack during the pandemic. Like, it was great. I think I did things so differently than I have in the past. Like, I have intentionally made space. Somebody made a shout out to Donut. I love Donut. Donut is a great way to build relationships. It's a Slack app, and it helps you randomly like connect with people who might be in your geography or even around the world for just hanging out. I love to do that. I also like something that my manager did, which I talked about, was he set up 15 minutes a day for me. And I cannot tell you how important that was when I was onboarding remotely, because I knew I would get unblocked every day. And that was like, I think as most of us take on new roles or responsibility, like you feel that burden. You always get concerned about, what if I get stuck? Who's going to help me? I don't know these people or haven't met them in person. So something as simple as 15 minutes a day, a conversation 15 minutes a day, like can really help you on board. So I would highly recommend that. I would highly recommend it to use, but I also refer to my peer, Steve Wood, who joined 3 weeks before me. So here we are, 2 leaders in a new company, onboarding remotely together. And we started spending 15 minutes a day every day. And that really helps strengthen our relationship. And, so much of cross-functional relationships or any work relationship, I feel, is like 3 things. One is shared view of reality. Do we all agree that we are where we need to be as a team, as a company, as an organization? 2 is flow of information. Like, for example, if you're a product leader and I'm an engineering leader, product leaders have access to different information like business metrics or research or what does, or sales and what their requests are. And engineering leaders have very different information like team health or execution or projects that are getting delayed. And that information needs to flow more now than before, because we are not seeing each other every day. And finally, it's like shared success. And these small meetings of like 15 minutes just sync together. It doesn't have to be a long time, will help you get on the same page.
It makes sense. And I've definitely heard from other engineering leaders and executives that during the pandemic, they've been meeting sometimes twice the number of one-on-ones, or just because you have to simulate in some ways these like water cooler moments and these types of things that otherwise would happen. It totally makes sense. This next question from M, I think this is like a kind of a 101, if you will, kind of question for the folks that have managed only in person and are kind of doing this remote thing for the first time. How do you actually like manage remote teams and track their progress? Do you use some kind of like tracking software? Like, how do you really stay on top of things when it's all remote?
Yeah. So we are very lucky at Slack because we have Slack at Slack. I think Slack uses Slack so differently and so brilliantly. Like there's this whole concept to like, for example, if there's a request in channel and somebody's looking at it, they'll put the looking eyes emoji. And when they've answered, they will do a green check mark. It's so simple and brilliant. I'm like, why was I using anything else before I got here? So that was super helpful. Small tip if you're a Slack user. Jira, like, the standard suite, like Atlassian suite of software is super important. I think it doesn't change. You have to be data-driven as an engineering leader. You have to make data-driven decisions. Dashboards are your best friend. So I actually am very data-driven. I lean into the dashboards. So I have obviously the process dashboards, Scrum, Agile dashboards. I have some things I look at are observability metrics on how the product's doing, like latency reports and P90 numbers. I love Git metrics as well. So if it's like Git Prime or Code Velocity, there's so many tools that actually give you insight into the cycle time. So developer productivity metrics. What else? And all these metrics are great, but metrics without context is just dangerous. So I would say in the end of the day, you need to understand the human behind the metrics, and that's what's going to make you successful.
100%. The human behind the metrics. That's my biggest takeaway, right? With empathy and with everything here, right? That you need to understand the human behind the metrics. I absolutely love that. With that, we've hit our time. Rukmini, I want to thank you so much for your wisdom, your empathy, your energy. I always feel warm talking to you, and I always love to see you. And I look forward to connecting in person after the pandemic.
Yeah, same here, David. It's wonderful as always. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.